I am the first woman in my family to go to university. And that comes with a lot of stress, of wanting to prove yourself, of wanting to be the best person that you can. So to have another person look at you and say, no, you can do that.
Do it, yeah.
I can help you do that. Don't worry about not knowing this particular thing. I'm here. That's what we're here to do. We're here to encourage. We're here to motivate. We're here to educate. I think that does so much for a person just to believe in themselves that they can do something. Let's do it. And that was the kind of support that I had not gotten in my entire 4 years of university. He is a champion for representation and visibility. He has done recently did a TED Talk talking about how video games can elevate education. And without people like that, I know that I would not have the space and a place here. And seeing somebody like that only inspires me to grow up and be that person for somebody else and encourage somebody to get in there and do what they want because they want to, and kind of like get rid of those feelings of anxiety or the idea that I can't, right? So easy to tell you if you can't, and you just need the right person to be like, nah, bro, you can.
Right.
Yeah. So big up Chris, big up Jeff. They're the best.
What's up, good people? Welcome to the Game Changers podcast. I am your host, Didio Nassis. Now let's go change the game. What's up, good people? Welcome back to the Game Changers podcast. I'm your guy, Didio Nassis, your host, Didio Nassis. We have a esteemed guest, all right? I was just commenting earlier before we hit record that she's the first lady of the Game Changers podcast, all right? Now, before we started, I meant to ask you, how do I pronounce your last name?
Oh, yes. No worries. I get that all the time. People call me very interesting things. Okay. But my full name is Brianna Roett. Roett.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Now we're going to get back to the intro. Our esteemed guest, Brianna Roett, is a senior year media production student and lab supervisor and event coordinator at the Red Bull Gaming Hub in the esteemed Toronto Metropolitan University. All right. Using her background in event planning, social justice, media, and virtual production, Brianna advocates for safe and diverse spaces in game development and esports for equity deserving communities. Working alongside professionals in the video game industry such as TED Speaker. Is it TED Speaker?
Yeah, my supervisor, boss, professor is a TED speaker.
Okay, supervisor, boss, professor, TED speaker, Dr. Christopher Alexander, and Epic Games. She uses game development software like Unreal Engine to create works of art with inclusivity at its core. Game Changers Podcast. Welcome, Brianna Roett, to the Game Changers Podcast. Now let's change the game. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. I think this is so awesome. So, yeah.
I appreciate it, man. I'm glad we got this done so we can just really get this fire female perspective, and so we can get like because the female perspective in esports and gaming, well, from my experience, all the ways the dopest, because the attention to detail is far more superior. That's what I think anyway. So, welcome to the show. Let's just get into it, man. So, how did you get into the space of esports and find yourself like really immersed in this crazy world of esports? Because it's not just one thing; it's multifaceted.
Yeah, it really is. My journey into the tech and esports space was, I guess, I'll say in quotes, not traditional. I grew up in a low-income household with a single mother who did not have the resources and funds to be dropping money for consoles. That was, I think, my childhood and obviously the childhoods of a lot of people growing up. So while I couldn't play games in the way that I wanted to, I found growing up, I watched YouTube all the time, and I would just watch other people play video games. And to me, being immersed in that was so cool, and it was just as interesting, at least for me at the time, than playing video games, because I still got to see the story, see the characters, have somebody play it without dying all the time, which
Right.
would not happen if I was playing. And I think that was just always in the back of my head was I loved spectating. I loved watching other people play video games, and that was like a big driver in me finally getting into the space. But originally, I went into university at TMU, Toronto Metropolitan
Big
University.
Toronto.
Yeah, in the media production program because I wanted to go into broadcast journalism. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to deliver the news, and I
Oh
very
man.
quickly realized that I would rather be behind the scenes than in front of the camera. I then went into audio, where I did radio and podcasting for a number of years for work. Then during the pandemic, I kind of pivoted and went into television production. I ended up working at Toronto's local news station doing programming, and then at an entertainment news show called eTalk. I'm
Ah
doing
yeah.
production coordinating work. And that was fun, and I loved it, and it was still the media aspect that I wanted. But it wasn't until my final year of university that I ended up working in the Red Bull Gaming Hub, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, for my senior thesis project. And I was in there every day for 6 months, blood, sweat, and tears in the lab, working on a completely virtual fashion art exhibit. And
Ooh.
I loved it so much. I got to work with game design technology for the first time, like Unreal and Twinmotion. And it was just such like a new, uncharted place for me, but I felt immediately at home.
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't know everything about the space, but I wanted to learn. And I had really great professors and peers who kind of helped me along that process. So by the time I had finished that project, I went to my professor, who was also the manager of the lab, and said, "Look, you need to give me a job. You need to give me a job here.
Okay.
I love it here. I want to improve the space. What can I do to help? Let me, please." And I got the job, and ever since I've been working in the lab and helping out with different tournaments and workshops, and it has been the best
Yeah.
experience of my life. So
Wow. You've had that's a lot of experience gained in the last what's it? I don't know, few years. I'm guessing that's the span of
yeah,
it. Like how
yeah,
you mentioned pivoting, but that's like that's like a 360, 720. Then you pivoted. Like that's
yeah.
a lot of experience gained in the industry. Like really, really hands on. Like you worked at the news station.
Yeah, I know a lot of people go into university and specialize as they go on over time. They're like, "Oh, I want to be in audio, so I'm going to take these courses and then I'm going to finish and I'll specialize in audio." And that was just not my journey, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. I think one of the great things about my program in particular, which was media production, was that it was so broad that you had the ability to pivot, that I
Hmm.
could go from course to course to course, figure out what I wanted, and then do that. So I'm very lucky and grateful in that way. But especially when it comes to like game design and esports, that was just so new to me, and I felt like I had like 6 months where I really had to buckle down and learn the skills if I wanted to succeed. And I think it was just kind of like getting in that mindset, like, I want to know more about this. I clearly have a passion for this. How do I get there?
Yeah.
It's been a it's been an interesting journey, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
Do you know how fearless you have to be just to demand a job? Like, hey, give me a job. I'm here to work. Give me a job. That takes some guts, man. You know. Salute to you for doing that, right? So
Thank you.
so that's fire because obviously you're effective at what you're doing because you were granted the opportunity. Were you did you have any experience coming out of high school to actually I guess to actually prepare you for your experiences that you wanted to get into before you got the experience?
Honestly, I think in high school there were attempts.
Hmm.
Um, that was, oh my gosh, almost 5 years ago now, which feels so weird to say. But I don't think my school system, the public school system,
Right.
was equipped to teach students the things that they needed to know, specifically about media and the changes that would be coming in the next 4 to 5 years, right?
Right.
Um, we had some computer labs, but we weren't running anything serious on there. We didn't have any esports clubs.
Mm.
The one class that I took in high school was media studies, where we just kind of learned like the basics of storytelling and marketing, and it was nowhere near what I would be learning, obviously, when I got to university.
Yeah.
But I think that I have always been an ambitious person,
Right.
maybe sometimes to my own defaults. And when I find something that I like, I fixate on it and I'm like, I have to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
And that has helped me get to where I am.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a little bit of false confidence. Maybe it's just,
Oh.
yeah, it's the ambition, I think, is what really drove me. So even though I knew I wasn't necessarily the most prepared,
Hmm.
I was more than willing to do what I had to do to get to that point.
You know what? I think that's a point that really gets glossed over because I'm in South Carolina. I'm born and raised in South Carolina, so we didn't have anything that can prepare you for things that we're doing right now that are free. We can actually all you need is internet and a broadcasting system or to record yourself and put out content, right? So
Yep.
we didn't have anything like that to inspire us to get into the media space. But I was always like a nerd, like just like you said, that ambition to learn stuff and teach myself stuff. So I always
Mhm.
had that. But for you, like, did you like what was your first piece of content? I know you. I don't know if you're gonna remember it or not. What was your first piece of content that you were a part of?
That I was a part of, or that like I just oh, that I was a part of.
A
Oh,
part of, yeah,
um, when I started, like I said, I started in audio and radio.
yeah.
So the first show that I did was a collective that I did with a bunch of other students called Penny for Your Thoughts. I can say that because I came up with the name.
Okay.
And it was a radio show that we did every week dedicated to mental health
Yeah.
and what mental health looks like in different communities, whether that's women or men or new students. And we really try to interview people to get their perspectives on what their mental health journey looked like, what supports they used. And that idea of like equity and mental health was always very, very important to me from the moment I started doing content creation. Um, and then eventually I got hired by my university to work on an educational podcast series, preparing high school students from equity deserving groups for all the things that they would need to know going into university. So from the very beginning, I think I have always been interested in access, opportunity, EDI, which is equity, diversity, and inclusivity.
Okay.
And I'm trying to now find ways to bring that into the game development and esports world. But that has kind of been where my passion has lied in content creation.
So you mentioned equity. So is that like I never really heard of that until today. Like, can you explain? Can you break that down just a little bit to me?
Sure, I would love to. Yeah, so EDI, equity
Mhm.
deserving communities, these are all kind of terms that have become very commonplace to me, but up until maybe 2 years ago, I had never heard. I think when you grow up in school, you kind of learn the difference, like equality, which is where everybody gets the same thing,
Right.
versus equity, where we're assessing an individual person's needs,
Hmm.
figuring out what their backgrounds are, what their levels of income are, what their privileges and disadvantages are, and then helping that individual person, instead of just giving everybody a blanket solution to the same things. Like I said, for example, for me, I did come from a low income family. I did not have the resources to maybe play the games that I wanted to or access the technology that I did. And that is something that goes into account when we're talking about equity, right? And that looks like a number of different things. So, first, like when it comes to video games, at least, Equity and EDI can look like a bunch of things.
Right.
Very simply, like character creation. When you log onto a video game and you get a character, and that default template character is a white man,
Right.
or you go to customize your character, all the features are very Eurocentric looking and white, and you know that no matter what you do, you're not going to create the character that you feel most comfortable as playing a game. That is an EDI issue. When
Gotcha.
we are looking at esports, like obviously now women are having a larger voice in the video game and esports ecosystem. Almost half of the people that play video games are women, but only 5% maybe of that population of women are considered professional esports athletes.
Right.
Why is that? So it's kind of like looking at all the different areas, at least here for esports, and figuring out what are some things we could work on, what are some things that we're seeing that maybe we could do better at and improve on, whether that's you playing a video game, you playing in a professional tournament, and like how can we do that? At least that's what I hope to continue doing in my work.
Man, thank you for breaking that down because I never heard the term equity when it came to video gaming, and
Yeah.
now it makes perfect sense. It's like the evolution of equality, far as well, you gotta go, you gotta go. Okay, it's like it's almost like the next step when it comes to like inclusion or equality, right? So I think that's really really dope because but for years, when you created a character, just like you said before, when you create a character, right, you only had so many options. And I remember when 2000, like probably 2015, when NBA 2K had a character, he was just black, and you, no matter what you did, you had to play story mode as a black character, and everybody lost their mind, right? So I think that's like pretty huge, right? So like moving forward, like what does it look like for like on a national level? Like once you move out of Toronto Metropolitan, like what does it look like on a national level or a global scale? Because are you a part of those type of initiatives?
Yeah, and that's something I'm glad you bring that up because that's something that I have really been starting to think about now as I leave university and I think about what I want to do for my career. I know that EDI and promoting healthy spaces in esports is something I want to do, but like you said, what does that look like outside of my university? One of the things that I've become so interested in the last few weeks has been global outreach,
Right.
specifically for Caribbean, West Indian, and African American communities. My mother's side of the family is Bayesian. I grew up in a very lively, soulful Caribbean home.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that just doesn't really get talked about is esports and tech. So I've been trying my best to find places like that, especially in Barbados, where my family is from. Big up Barbados.
Barbados.
And see what we can do for people who are living there and having access to that kind of technology. I am so lucky to live in a city like Toronto and have the lab, the Red Bull Gaming Hub that I do, that is equipped with computers and software, and it's free, and like so many schools don't have that. One of the big conventions that runs in Barbados every year, which is actually coming up in a few months, is called Anime Con. And it is one of Barbados's biggest pop culture events, not only for like cosplay and film, but also for esports and game development. And I would love to go to different parts of the Caribbean and figure out what is needed there to create an ecosystem that is big, that is lively, that can support itself. And that's sometimes a little bit stressful to think about as somebody like a student who's new and emerging. But I feel like if there's enough people that have that same mindset and want to do outreach with different communities all over the world, and like once again assess what it is that this individual group needs, that would make my whole life. And I hope to kind of, as I get older, work with other organizations, non-for-profits, charities that are willing to do the same thing and have that mission in mind.
Okay, that's you hit that nail on the head. You're like bringing something back to your native community is gonna be big. That's gonna like
Mhm.
that's gonna make you feel awesome, I guess. All right. So I was talking to my cousin about something like that for my community about like just going into different schools or creating a program where we can get these kids to stop being consumers of content and start being creators of content. Something
Mhm.
that can be really really applicable, like that they can learn in maybe an hour or maybe 2 hours or maybe in a week or whatever. So I've tasked myself with that type of curriculum to come up with something to help the kids around this area because if you're not playing sports, it's nothing else they want to do, but play sports and
Yeah.
rap, So, but that's dope though. Bringing that to Barbados, it's gonna be fire. Like I never heard of you said it's called Anime Con,
AnimeCon,
right?
ANIMEKON. And I think it runs in the beginning of October.
Yeah.
And his name is Omar Kennedy. He is the person who put together this convention, and it's just basically to bring that kind of community to the islands, which I think is something that we so desperately need.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also just like another big part of that, like you were talking about community and helping the kids, and that is another big thing that I try to do in my work. One of the things that we do in the university is host workshops, whether that's for university students, or we're also working with public schools to get younger kids into the lab, show them that this technology exists, get them acquainted with some of the software, because sometimes it's not enough just to say that these things exist. It's
Hmm.
here. It's also empowering young people to say, you can do this. You can learn this. You might not have a background in this, but it's something that is accessible for you here, and you have the skills to learn that. Like Unreal Engine, for example, which is software that we have for free to access in our lab at the school, also comes with a number of tutorials that you can watch and then mimic, whether that is getting your shaders right, or how to build certain environments, how to upload assets, how to build garments. And those are all free things for you to learn. So I'm so glad that we're now getting to a place where, like you said, the access to this technology is getting better,
Yeah.
but it's also empowering young people to say, you can do this, you can use this software to tell your own story, to make your own content, and not rely on others to tell your story for you, right?
Right. Right. So as a
Yeah.
lab supervisor, like how does that how do you supervise the lab? And when you say lab, you're talking about the Red Bull Game Hub. Like I think Aphrodite called it the lab also, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know I guess experiments go down in there, or just not experiment, but you guys are applying what you're learning, and you're just like creating, right?
Mhm.
Oh, so what
Yeah,
is that like?
so my job is so funnily enough, I talked about getting this job for myself. One of the things that my supervisor was nice enough to do was let me create my own title. So yes,
So
my official title is lab supervisor and student event coordinator. But
oh,
that
that's
job kind of has a number of different I guess tasks involved. So
I
one
thought it
of
was two
them would,
jobs.
well, yeah, it's two jobs, but it's one title, and it's yeah, and a number of different duties and
Two titles, one
responsibilities.
person.
Yes,
Okay.
very much so. So one of the things I do during the school year is I do booking. So just like to give, I guess, some context for people who don't know, is the Red Bull Gaming Hub, which is at my university, is like a cutting edge environment in the heart of the city where we embrace video game and esports industries. So that is esports broadcasting, that is game development and production. We have 36 high-end PCs that were all sponsored by AMD.
Hmm.
And we have that, but obviously the university does not have 36 media students.
Right.
So a big part of what I do is making sure that all the booking forms are ready for students to get in, sign in for a date that they would like to get their work done. We also have free play days for students who aren't necessarily doing course related work, who just want to come in, play some games, and do that kind of stuff. So I just manage the flow of who
Oh,
comes in and who
okay.
comes out. That's
So
one of my jobs. Um, My other job is to do front of house duties for any of the esports tournaments that we run in the lab. So we have a actual dedicated varsity esports club at our university, which is amazing. We do everything: CS:GO, Rocket League, COD, like a
Yeah.
number of different a number of different esports, and I just make sure that people get in there, that they're getting in at the time they're supposed to, that takedown is happening, if I can assist somebody, technical issues, anything like that. That's what I'm there for. We also have external media groups, not media groups, external esports groups who like to run grassroots tournaments in the lab. So a couple weeks ago, we had a Street Fighter 6 beta tournament. Places like Incendium GG, Toronto Serenity, a bunch of different external organizations come and run them in the lab. So once again, I just make sure that everything's supposed to be where it's supposed to be, that all the computers are running, that everybody's having the experience that is awesome. Because who doesn't? We also have like rooms for spectating, so people who just want to come and watch the tournaments, we have more than enough room in the university to cater to that. So
Yeah.
that's another thing I do. And then finally, I guess the one that's my favorite is I've had the ability to get to design and run workshops for different whether that's game design or esports. So one of the ones that I did was we got a bunch of university students together and got them to LiDAR 3D scan their own faces and then import them from Blender to Unreal Engine and make our own meta-human characters. And I thought that was really important to do because once again, the idea of customization, of diversity in character creation is something that I care about, and making sure that everybody feels represented. I've also am planning to run workshops for young students to learn Twin Motion, because I think the more you get young people acquainted with that kind of technology, the easier it is for them to build on that as they get older.
Yeah.
So just coming up with different things that we could do for the community and benefiting the community are all things that make my job feel so worthwhile. So yeah, a bunch of things, but that's
Right.
my, I guess, official role and title.
Yeah, you have me ready to sign up or apply for Toronto Metropolitan University. Like I'm ready to be a part of the team, man. That's dope though. That's dope. And
Oh
so
God, it's so
so that is are those real faces that you sent earlier? Those are
yeah.
real people?
So the ones that so there's a couple things that I sent you. I sent you I sent you my face. I scanned my face, moved it into Unreal, did a whole like character creation situation, and I thought it was funny. I think there's also still some work to go in terms of character creation on Unreal, specifically when it comes to hair textures. As I mean, I guess there's a video aspect to this, as most people can see. I do have very curly hair,
Yeah.
and that's not something that's reflected in some of the character options that you have. So
Yeah.
it's that's something that I try to highlight. But also, you're gonna have to repeat the question for me, darling. It's the way that it just like
Oh,
evaporated from my brain.
no, you were on the right track. You were talking about you were explaining to us about
Oh, the
the
faces that I
faces, were they
sent you.
real or not? Yeah.
Yes, yes. All those faces are real. We got like 20 students to get in the lab, scan their faces. So those are all real people, not
Yeah.
AI. And then some of the other videos I sent you were just garments and clothes that I made in a software called Clo 3D and Marvelous Designer. And I built those from scratch, and that was a big part of my senior thesis project, which is called Digital Eleganza, the virtual fashion show.
Okay, so like digital. I gotta say this: digital eleganza.
Yes, digital eleganza.
Hey, what does that mean? What is eleganza? What's that?
So I mean, I don't know if any of your viewers watch RuPaul's Drag Race, but it's one of my favorite shows in the whole world. And one of the things that they do on the show is do fashion competitions, but
Okay.
they're called like eleganza extravaganza.
Okay.
And they're just very like elaborate, grand names. And
Mm.
in my project, I really tried to pay homage to like underground ballroom and Vogue culture from in the States in the 80s. That was like a really big place for queer people to come together and to express themselves in the ways that they saw fit without persecution or judgment.
Hmm.
And that is kind of what I wanted to take into my project. I did mine based off royalty, based off ballroom, but I just thought digital eleganza was such like a nice way to kind of sum up what I want to do for my project. Yes, it's all virtual.
Yeah.
There's no physical garments being made here, but it's still elegant and grand and amazing. So yes, digital eleganza.
Oh, that's gonna be fly. Like, so you're just gonna have a entire virtual or digital fashion show or eleganza, right?
Yes.
All created by you. Everything that's coming from you're pouring it out of your mind into the that's gonna be fly. That's fly. I think that's stuff like that is so dope. If I can learn stuff like that because I have a merch line, so if I could like create my own characters and make them walk and talk and all kind of other crazy stuff, man, that'll be fly, man. You know?
It is so cool. And the possibilities are like even now, like I finished my project in December
Hmm.
of last year. And even since then, Unreal has done crazy things to boost the way that fashion is being conducted, especially when we're talking about like the inclusivity of different bodies. It's very rare sometimes to see clothing in the real world where everybody feels represented and everybody's size is included. And just like in the digital space, you have more of an affordance to play with those things. And I know a lot of people who are in the graduate version of my program who are actually working on their own digital merch lines and are
Yeah.
creating those things in digital design software to then eventually bring to real life. But I think that it opens the door for so much more experimentation
Hmm.
in terms of what you like and what you want to convey, because clothing is one of those things that can get very tricky, especially when we're talking about like size inclusivity, fast fashion issues, production, all that kind of stuff. So I just thought doing it in a digital format would be so interesting, and it's something I really want to keep doing as well as I get deeper into my design career, I guess.
But that's very interesting to me because I was discussing this with a friend probably like a month ago that I would like to figure out a way to get my clothing into GTA Online because he just started his own server a couple of months ago, right? So what if I had a store where you just sold just all divine dedicated clothing? That's the name of it, my clothing line. I thought that would be so fire if
Oh,
that
you're
was
wearing the shirt
possible.
right now, right? Divine Dedicated?
Yeah, divine dedicated clothing.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff if you're cool with it.
Yes.
I've tried to. I really would need. I really do need a woman's opinion and input because it's not because I like me making women's clothing is is wild. Like really, I'm just gonna go be real. It's like not supposed to be happening, right? Um, well, it's what oh, it's you guys have another huge event coming to town, right? Yeah, yeah, it's like a convention. I do not
I'll
remember.
pull up my calendar right now. Let me pull up my
Aphrodite,
calendar.
he mentioned it to me. I cannot remember exactly what it is, but uh,
Oh, yes, we do. We 100%, that is correct. We do have a conference coming up. It is called the, let me see. Let me not talk out my ass 1 second. It's called the Serious Play Conference, I believe. Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Wow, I can't believe I remembered that. Yes,
Yeah.
so the Serious Play Conference is running from October 11th to the 13th, and it's a conference that offers like a full track of sessions for serious gamers and simulation training and education. And we have companies like Google
Hmm.
and Roblox coming in to kind of learn and workshop. So one of the things that
Wow.
we also do in the lab is like it's not just catered to students. We're also trying to teach adults that are already currently in the industry what is changing and what they need to know, right? I think a lot of the times, especially when we're talking about like technology,
Hmm.
anything like that, it's very easy for seasoned professionals to get lost in it sometimes.
Okay.
A funny example that I use all the time is like I'm in a media production major, and I think certain professors really showed their hand when we got into the pandemic because you're teaching a media production class and you don't know how to work the Zoom.
Wow. Hey, you know how crazy that is? Like I see that all the time.
There's so many, right, exactly. Everybody's seen that. Like you're in the space and you can't record the
Zoom
lecture.
or Google Hangouts or something like very
Yeah,
simple. Like but it can happen. It can happen.
right. And it can happen. And no shade to those people.
It's a little
It's just
shade.
making sure that everybody is staying updated and is learning. Like learning is a never-ending
Mhm.
process. You don't get to any point in your life and go, I'm done. I don't need to learn anything anymore.
Right.
So that is something at the lab that we're trying to push. It's like everybody can learn. The digital landscape is changing
Changing
so quickly
monthly.
that you need that, right?
Mhm. Monthly. So how do you stay up on game? Obviously you're a student, but like how, like outside of what you have to do for school, like do you do anything else like outside of what you're doing now to like to keep yourself fresh or keep yourself abreast? Like we just learned about threads like not too long ago. Like how do you like do you guys like I don't know, I guess. But you're not on the not you're not into marketing. You're on show development, right? So
Yeah, it's always like I think since it's been so recent since
mhm.
I've gotten into the space. I say like game development and esports because that is generally where I exist. And I've been trying to figure out like, okay, I love this place, but what is the title? When I go to get a job, what is
Yeah.
the title, the
I'm losing
position
my
that I
voice.
want? So, I guess like in terms of, I'll just speak professionally first. LinkedIn has been one of like the best resources for me to connect with other people in the industry, not only in Canada but also in the States. Find out what people are doing in the esports community, whether that's grassroots tournaments or marketing or anything like that. And I find just like seeing what other people are doing helps give a clearer picture to what we can accomplish. Personally speaking, um, I'm actually one of my only friends that like plays video games on my own time. It's just one of those things that is so personal to me,
Hmm.
that I just stay in my little bubble. In the pandemic, I started playing League of Legends.
Okay.
And that has like the grip that has had on me for the last few years has been absolutely insane. And then meeting people in the lab who also have similar interests, talking to them, hearing about their interests. Who are you watching on Twitch? Like, let's get into a Discord thing. I think it's like sometimes you have to, especially if you're in a situation like me where you don't know that many people personally who exist in that space, to
Hmm.
go out on your own, do your own research, see what you can learn. I am constantly watching like Unreal Engine clips and tutorials that get put in my YouTube feed all the time. And
Okay.
I think it's just kind of like sometimes you have to go and find that stuff for yourself
You
because
really
it's
do.
not always going to be presented to you, and it wasn't presented to me as somebody who didn't originally start in the esports space.
Hmm.
It took a lot of me saying like I said, what do I need to learn? What do I need to see? Who do I
Yeah.
need to speak to? And then going out to do that. So that's like I think the internet has been the biggest place for me to just like learn and sit in my room and type away and do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people who are introverted sometimes and don't always want to go out and talk to people in that kind of way. So I think the internet is like such a good place to learn and be educated and meet with other people in a space that feels more comfortable to you.
Have you ever seen something on YouTube, just or not even just YouTube, maybe TikTok or Instagram or another social media channel that you just like, God damn, like how do they do that? I need to find out how they how did they use Real Engine to do this? Have you ever seen something just ridiculously incredible that
Yeah.
you just needed to
Oh,
find
no.
out?
All the time. I
Yeah.
when I started working on my thesis project, the fashion show, the first thing I did was look up digital fashion shows. What are people doing? How does that work? And on the Unreal website, I can try to find the actual link for it, but there was a rendering of somebody who did their own virtual fashion show, and I remember sitting there and watching it for the first time and holding my head, going like, "This looks
And this
so
what oh,
intricate."
so this is what we doing? Wow.
Yeah, right, this is what we're up to. This is what I have to sit down and do for the next 6 months.
Hmm.
I was, I was like, my mind was blown, but I was stressed, but I was like intrigued and excited and like all of those feelings to come from something that is digital, that is virtual. I think shows how important those kinds of things are and the impact it can have on us as physical people in the real world. I think that another one I saw was you know the show The Last of Us, the game The Last of Us. Who doesn't
Yeah.
love that? It's my favorite. I saw somebody build their own The Last of Us environment with like in this post-apocalyptic world with like all these buildings that were old and decrepit and like just a time-lapse video of that. And it's always the time-lapse videos that get you
Yeah.
because it's like, how did you even do that? Like the time lapse is not giving me the detail that I need to execute this on my own, but they're
Okay.
still so cool to see. Any Unreal Engine tutorials, I would encourage anybody that has the time to just look through some of them, even the time lapse videos, because it is crazy, but also so inspiring.
So hear that, good people. You hear that? Continued education. Do your due diligence, man. And it's also fun, especially if you're really interested in what you're searching for, right? So inspiring students. How do you inspire your team, or how do you guys motivate each other? Do you guys is it a team? I guess your day job, right? The job that's not the only thing you do though, right? It's like you're on the production crew somewhere else, right? So event coordinator at the Red Bull uh, facility is something else, right? So
Yeah.
how do you like? What kind of team do you work with?
So I've been really lucky so far that, at least on the student side, everybody that I've been able to work with has kind of had that same passion,
Hmm.
that same ambition. And in that way, that makes my life so much easier because I know that the people that are here to work on this tournament this day or here to do this workshop today are people that really care about what they're learning. I think it's also at the same time very easy for people to get overwhelmed, especially if you, like, even in my position, was not really acquainted with this kind of landscape beforehand. To go from knowing nothing about design, coding, animating, to then having to execute really big projects can be very daunting. And that is one of the things that I really try to help students understand is that like the potential that you have,
Hmm.
especially when you're in the right space and other people are willing to encourage you and just tell you that you can. Because I think I went a lot of my high school believing that I couldn't. Not high
Wow.
school, sorry. University. Even
Okay.
high school, all of
Yeah.
it. My education was always very stressful sometimes. I am the first person, the first woman in my family to go to university. And that comes with a lot of stress, of
Uh,
wanting to prove yourself, of wanting to be the best person that you can. So to have somebody, another person look at you and say, no, you can
You
do
can
that.
do it. Yeah.
I can help you do that. Don't worry about not knowing this particular thing. I'm here. That's what we're here to do. We're here to encourage, we're here to motivate, we're here to educate. I think that does so much for a person just
Hmm.
to believe in themselves that they can do something. And then another thing that I really look at and I encourage individuals to look at not only with themselves but with their peers is the aspect of mental health, which I think is something that does not get talked about enough in the esports industry.
That is
Is like,
big.
yeah, it's very big. If you're spending any large portion of your time doing one thing and only that thing and not adventuring outside of that or talking to other people about things that are going on in your life is immediately going to have negative negative effects. So as good as you can be at something and as many skills as you can amass at the same time is like you need to be like, okay, well, what else do I need? How do
Right.
I prioritize other things in my life? Is this becoming too stressful? Am I working too hard? Especially like professional esports athletes who are sitting in a chair for how many
Yeah.
hours of their day?
Hmm.
Like, you need a place to be able to decompress and talk about that. And it doesn't matter what you're doing necessarily. It more so matters like, am I getting the help that I need? And that is something that we try to focus on, especially with our like varsity esports clubs,
Yep.
are like making sure, yes, are you motivated? Are you in it? Are you playing the game? Sure. But what else can we
Are
can we
you
do for you?
are
What
you
else can
good?
we help you with? What else do you need to talk? Yeah, are you good?
Right.
Something as simple
As
as
simple as that.
are
Hey man, you
you
good? Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like you mentioned that I think like the huge part about esports and just the content creation space, as far as mental health is concerned, you are creating your own content for the most part, or unless you're working on a team project. But even with that, you're gonna want your stuff to be the best, right? So gratification. If you don't see your hard work being viewed or received in a huge light or the light that you thought it was supposed to receive, and that could be devastating to someone that puts out content. And I've seen like my timeline, my Twitter timeline, just filled with with, with tweets from my peers and people that I follow that I don't know, but I follow them. Man, this is tough. I'm having a bad day today. I'm feeling off today. I feel like quitting. This ain't it. Whatever's going on, and it's been more and more of that ever since the pandemic. That I feel like it's just increased, and
Yeah.
I think that like just a simple phrase, "Hey man, you straight? What's up, man? You good?" Like I think that's important. So if you see someone tweeting that, don't ignore it, man. Just DM them or just respond under the comment, "Hey man, are you okay?" But on another note, man, like getting professional help or guidance should not be ignored, man. Go get it if you feel like you need it.
Yeah.
Um,
It can be so overwhelming.
yeah, I went,
Um,
so yeah, so I had to go to sit down and talk to someone because I feel like shit. I was about to lose my damn mind, like after the pandemic. Like, 'cause there's a lot of things changed. But anyway, I'm sorry. So, but that's a huge part of it though. And so, how do you guys like help with that, or do you have counselors on deck that you connected with, or you plugged in like
so
that, or
yeah, I know that, well, at least my university, and this is, I guess, advice I would give to any university student, is while you are there, use the resources that are available to you. When you put down that money for tuition, or just in general, that isn't just going to your courses. That is going to the athletic centers that you are able to use. That goes to, in my case, the labs that you're able to use, or the counseling sessions you're able to use. Advocating for self is so difficult,
mm,
especially in a place like a university where there's thousands of students, and it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle of academia. You If you don't have the support, which, if we're going to be realistic, there are a lot of people, especially when we're talking about like one of the things that I did in my mental health podcast was talk to men about what their experience has been like, and the unanimous kind of message has been like it can be very isolating as a man to feel like you have things you need to talk about or you have issues and just not doing it because that's what's expected of you.
Right.
So I think if there's something I really want to motivate students and young people to do is have enough respect and love for yourself to know when you need to advocate for yourself. Whether that's being like, I know that I'm struggling in this course. Can I talk to a student academic advisor and see what I need to do? I know that I'm having troubles at home. Is there a counselor in the school that I could find? I'm having financial troubles and I need help with work. Is there like a financial advisor or somebody that we could talk to in the school to talk about emergency funding? And I only know that these things exist because I had to do the research on my own and in my work to find out where these things are. So at least in the school aspect is these things do exist. And if they don't, then that's another thing that we need to talk about is like our schools and institutions, our esports organizations, do they even have those things available for students to access or young people to access? Is there a mental health department? Is there a counselor that we could speak to? And if not, maybe it's time
Yeah.
to get on that because a student can only go so far to advocate for themselves if that specific department doesn't exist, right?
Right.
So it's so hard because as much as I would like to be like, here, go access it. It's all here for you. You also at some point have to do the individual work to be like, where can I find this help for myself?
Have you ever, um, I don't know, felt like you just hit a brick wall and you feel like, well, maybe I'm not going in the right direction? Have you had any doubt in what you're doing now?
All the time. And
Yeah.
um I'm a person who suffers with anxiety, generalized anxiety.
Hmm.
Um and as somebody who has also pivoted a number of times in my academic career, like I've talked about, there's not a day that goes by that's like, oh, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Is this in my wheelhouse? Am I even experienced enough to be here? A month ago, 2 months ago, if you would have told me that I had enough experience or was able to even speak about my journey on a podcast like this, the Game Changers podcast,
Game
I
changers.
would have been like, no way. I don't have the experience for that. I'm not good enough to do that. And those are all very common things that people feel all the time. And that's not to go ignored. Just because it's commonplace doesn't mean we should act like it doesn't exist. No. If you feel stuck, sit with that. Own that. That is totally valid.
Hmm.
But also, um, I think we have to remember that we are beings that are capable of evolving, of changing,
Right.
of learning. And just because you feel stuck in this spot or this season or this place does not mean that that is your outcome for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I have to I have to get up every day and feel confident in that. And I think a big part of that is passion, right? I know for myself, I'm passionate about development. I'm passionate about narrative writing and world building and character creation and esports and tournaments and all of those things, and that keeps me on the path. Is passion, is ambition. And if you don't
Right.
have that, or you don't feel that, or you're doing something every day and it's making you miserable, then maybe it's time to assess that and be like, so what do I need to do to feel more comfortable in this position,
Mm.
and pivot. It can be scary,
Yeah.
but it's worth it.
Yeah. It is worth it. And do you have any other passion projects that you're working on besides your thesis? Do you have anything that you're just working on privately? Like, I'm about to bust out with this. You know what I'm saying? Like out of nowhere.
Well, I feel like I can talk about it because it is in very pre-production stages.
Okay.
But I was very lucky that for my last course of my undergrad, I got to go to Italy, Cortona, for a course called Media and Museums.
Okay.
Which is another thing about me is I love art. Art and music have very much influenced the way that I take on digital design and the projects that I do.
Hmm.
Um, so for my last class, I got to pitch a video game that I created, did like fluff text for, came up with characters and objectives, and it is about a woman in Barbados who is exploring the cultural heritage sites that exist there. Um, and it was just something that was so amazing to work on and be able to like have my own experiences. The
Dope.
game was very much an
Dope.
ode to my grandmother who lived in Barbados for 20 something years before she moved to Canada. And that was just so much fun. And I, after speaking with my professor about it, kind of wanted to help me continue working on it outside of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that like projects never finish sometimes, right? You have an idea and you work on it a little bit, and then sometimes you sit back and you take a break and then you come back to it when you're ready. And like I try to view all my projects like that as a very like evolving, ongoing process. But in the
Right.
future, oh my gosh, there's nothing I don't want to work on. I really want to get into the development and design and narrative spaces and like work on pieces and stories that I feel like need to be heard. So hopefully in the future,
Yeah.
when I do bust out with something that that'll be great.
Yes, the sky's the limit, man. Like especially with stuff like this, it's whatever you can dream of, man. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see wait to see what you cook up. You know. Um, I still have like a couple more questions. I have a question about you have here advice for students, institutions, and esports organizations. Like, what would be your advice to someone that's
Oh,
in maybe the 11th grade or just come about to come out of high school? What would be your advice to students? What would be the advice that you would give a student, a young student?
oh, I really, I'm taking time to think about it because
No,
I
it's
really
okay.
want to
I'm gonna drink my water
say it.
because my voice is like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fading.
Water break. Um, Oftentimes the path of an innovator is a very lonely one. Um, and people aren't always going to have the same viewpoints
Hmm.
or ideas. And it can very quickly feel like I shouldn't be doing this because nobody else agrees with me
Nobody
or
else is
nobody else
doing it.
sees the vision that I see. Follow that. You know, like if you, that idea of, I keep going back to passion and ambition, our gut is very good at telling us where we want to be. And it can be so easy to feel like you need to dim your ideas or your light to fit
Fit
in a
in.
certain place.
Hmm.
But if you have an idea or a passion, dive into that, not only for the career or the grades, but for yourself, because exploring those passions can be such a good indicator of who you want to be and who you need to be and what your dreams are. And follow that. And that means you might be going to some new uncharted places.
Yeah.
I know for me it definitely did, but if I had gotten into the esports space and been like, well, I don't know nothing about this, so let me just get out of here, I would not have the experience and career that I have today. um so it's just about following that.
Hmm.
And if you have the resources to do it, and you're lucky enough, then right, the sky's the limit. and
Yeah.
and if you don't have that opportunity, I think finding places where you can, because they exist, and as time goes on more accessible places for people will exist, then find that, go to those places, meet those people, because they will help you. And I guess if there's any advice I would have for like organizations, leagues, in terms of kind of making their business the best it could be, is you start with developing a code of conduct. Creating a code of conduct that outlines acceptable behavior, consequences for inappropriate behavior,
Right.
providing education, offering training, workshops, diversity, inclusion, cultural sensitivity training. Those things can really make a world of a difference, especially when we're talking about corporate, when we're talking about having large groups of people together for tournaments.
Hmm.
Make sure you're creating opportunities for underrepresented groups, for women, for people of color, to help increase their representation. Use inclusive language and imagery, to make sure that you're being intentional with the type of groups that want to join in on the fun. Because
Right.
isn't that what video games and
Supposed to
esports
be
is all
fun.
about? It's just people wanted to join in on the fun and like
Hmm.
have that. And if you're excluding people from from that experience from the jump, then like you're losing out on a mass group of people who just want to join in on the fun, right?
Right.
And I think like listening to that feedback is so important. And if we all do those things from student to executive to whatever,
Mm-hmm.
we are on the right track to creating a healthier, more positive, inclusive video game community.
Yeah. Okay. So, who was that person that helped you and gave you advice that told you, "Hey, you do belong here. You're on the right path. You don't have to be. You don't have to feel this much anxiety about where you're headed or the direction you decided to pivot."
Yeah. Biggest shout out to my professor, supervisor, boss, father figure, um, Dr. Christopher Alexander. He
Oh
is
yeah.
the resident video games professor and Masters of Digital Media supervisor at Toronto Metropolitan University.
Yeah.
He has paved the way for so many things to happen, including the launch and opening of the lab, which he is the manager of.
Hmm.
Jeff LaChapelle also runs the lab and has been my supervisor and has just kind of helped me get on the ground and figure out what I need to know. But Chris is the person that I came to with my thesis project. And I told him straight up, I was like, I don't know how to do this,
Hmm.
but this is my idea and I think it's good and I want to do it, but I don't think I can.
Right.
And he looked at me and was like, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
100% you can. Like, this is what you want to do. You have your plan laid out. It's fire. Let's do it. And that was the kind of support that I had not gotten in my entire 4 years of university. He is a champion for representation and visibility. He has done recently did a TED Talk talking about how video games can elevate education. And without people like that, I know that I would not have the space and a place here. And seeing somebody like that only inspires me to grow up and be that person for somebody else and
Okay.
encourage somebody to get in there and do what they want because they want to. And kind of like get rid of those feelings of anxiety or the idea that I can't, right?
Right.
So easy to tell you if you can't. And you just need the right person to be like, nah, bro. You can.
Right.
Yeah. So big up Chris, big up Jeff. They're the best.
Right. Is that the whole shout out? Is that all the shout outs that you want to
Yeah,
give?
those are my shout outs. Shout out to everybody at the esports club. Shout out to everybody that works in the lab. Um, Anybody who has
Yeah.
supported me in my time and my career and just like I said, told me I can. Because that has been the most freeing and liberating thing that somebody could tell me and then I could tell myself.
Yeah. That's a fact. Because, like you said earlier, you can isolate yourself because you don't need a team of people to if you're self taught and you've already learned your skills to get out your ideas in the digital space, it could just be you, right? So you would end up isolating yourself not only to produce content but to actually create it. Like especially if you're streaming, you're going to be in this room away from your family and some of your friends, and they're going to look at you maybe like a little weirdo. You're gonna just attention. Yeah, you're like it's kind of weird. He just in there playing the game. Like, yeah, well, I mean, but anyway, that's just something that happens. But anyway,
All fun and games until you start collecting the check
until you
and
start
then
getting a check, right?
people take you seriously.
Exactly. So speaking of getting a check, so what do you see yourself going after your collegiate, after you close out your college year?
In a perfect world, I would really like to work with nonprofit organizations. Not just here, but internationally.
Mhm.
There is a non-for-profit called United XP. They run in the States and they help with helping doing consultation for people who want to kind of integrate esports into their curriculums, into their institutions. And I think that is something that I just so desperately want to connect with people and figure out what people need to be great, to be
Yeah.
successful, to do the things that they want to do, and whatever fashion I could do that in, whether that's an EDI officer, whether that is just doing consultation or even going to different places and speaking with people. I've I've always known since the beginning of my academic career that I just wanted to speak with others and then help others. And I think that there is there now is the time, especially to do that in like the tech and video game industry, as it's
It's
booming
booming.
and yeah, it's booming, and more people are gonna want to get in here.
Yep. Right.
I just want to make sure that everybody, or as many people as I can help, have the tools to succeed and do that, because that's what people did for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully.
Okay, yeah, we speaking it to existence here on the Game Changers
Yeah.
podcast. You're gonna go over there and change the game, right? So,
Yeah.
how can we find you on your socials? And do you like you mentioned you lock in with League of Legends, right? So, do you stream League of Legends, or you really just like you keeping that part private? You just gaming on
Well,
your own.
my famous line that like most of my friends and supervisors and everybody knows is that I very rarely like to be perceived. Um, I'm definitely more of an invisible spectator. But I exist, I'm around.
I
If
exist.
you want to see any of my work or get in contact with me, my LinkedIn is Brianna Roett, first name, last name. I also have my university's lab link in case you wanted to see the stuff that we're doing in there. And some of my work as well. But yeah, I would love to get into streaming though. I think that that might be the blend of all the worlds that I've wanted to be in, considering I went into university wanting to be on camera and that kind of stuff. And now, like with OBS, it's just like it kind of is like easier than ever to
Yeah,
do
just
those kinds of things now.
instantly.
So,
Right.
you know, and never say never.
Mhm.
I might say no right now, but next week you might be able to find me on Twitch.
Have we missed anything? I guess we're gonna wind it down and close it up in a second. Anything that you wanted to highlight or talk about before we close it out?
Um, Honestly, I just want to say thank you. Like I said, to even be on a podcast where somebody is curious about the work that I've done and the things I've achieved. I mean, like, yes, the validation is nice, but it also like it proves that the work that I'm doing is you know, it's important and it's something that we all should be talking about, whether that's coming from me or coming from somebody else. So I very much appreciate that you just gave me the opportunity to talk about something that I love, which
Right.
is gaming.
That's right. The game. That's gaming. This is game change. It was a dope conversation because you really hit a lot of stuff that like it's gonna have some nice replay value because you talked about mental health. You talked about how to pivot and it's okay to be scared, okay to learn about yourself that you can actually overcome your fear and continue to push forward. Because that's really the number one thing that people should really pay attention to about themselves. That you have the ability to push forward, no matter the circumstance. Really, as long as you're alive, it's not going to be perfect, but as long as you're alive, you can keep pushing, man. That's how I personally feel. But I appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on the show and being the first lady of the Game Changers podcast because you really gave us some
Thank
real good
you.
game, and I appreciate it. And I got to tell you, your Discord profile picture is hilarious. I was just, just to put that just to close out with that, like it
Thank
really
you.
tickled me to see that profile picture. I was like, man, what am I looking at? But
Yeah. I
yeah,
like to keep people guessing.
no shade, but I do wish you the best on all of your endeavors and what you have moving forward. And I'm definitely going to be paying attention. Get, follow you on all of your socials, and make sure you guys out there in Game Changer Land follow her back, and also follow your guy Didio Nassus at Didio Nassus on all socials, and also the Card Show podcast on all socials. Okay, and keep stay tuned with the COD MVPs on Instagram and Twitch, right? Because we'll be live streaming tournaments. We'll be live streaming the podcast, and we will be live streaming uh, the top 5, top 10 gameplays of the week. So a lot of dope stuff coming up. And man, I'm just gonna have to close it out. But anything else?
I'm
Nope.
good. I'm
All
good.
right. Yes, you got Didio Nassus. This has been the Game Changers podcast. And just remember, always live life, show love, be great, and always keep the kill feed lit. It's been your guy Didio Nassus, man. Out. We out. We out. Me and Brianna. We out. Peace. 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 I'm so sorry. I'm losing my voice. This is crazy.